يا أهل الجنة إن ربكم تبارك وتعالى يستزيركم فحي على زيارته.
The matter of masah al khuffayn, so doing masah over the socks, and we gave conditions and so on with regards to what our madhab says and how they need to be thick to a certain extent that water doesn't go through and so on, and someone can walk in them for the muqim, do like daily chores without them being ripped when you're walking outside. And if you're a musafir, you're a traveler, you have 3 days and 3 nights, they shouldn't rip within that period and so on. And obviously it's important to mention these things now, especially because of the weather. If our iman is weak, we would incline to following our desires. I don't want to take my socks off, them ones. And even though your socks are not eligible for tayammum, for masah, people would actually do so. So someone's asked a question: can you sleep with the socks on after masah on for wudu? Naam. So we did mention if you have 24 hours. So if you put the socks on, for example, I don't know, at dhuhr time, 1:30 p.m. and then if you broke your wudu at 4 p.m. or just after maghrib, 4:30, your 24 hours starts from that point. Yeah, so your 24 hours starts from 4:30 on that day until 4:30 of the next day. So even if you go to sleep in them and you don't take your socks off, then that's not a problem. You don't have to wash your feet. If you go to sleep and you wake up and the 24 hours is not finished, you just do masah over them. Yeah, but obviously if the 24 hours finishes, you have to wash your feet again. Khair. So inshallah for today's lesson, and if you do have questions on Zoom, and if you ask questions, we'll get to them at the end, bidnillahi ta'ala. So we said the linguistic meaning for the term tayammum is to intend, al-qasd. So in Arabic it means to intend. So you intend something. So we mentioned the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَا تَيَمَّمُوا الْخَبِيثَ مِنْهُ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses that verse here to mean not to intend filthy acts and so on. And the Shafi'ī definition for tayammum is wiping. So if I'm to read the Arabic first, which I don't have on the screen, but this is the translation. So إِيصَالُ تُرَابٍ طَهُورٌ لِلْوَجْهِ وَالْيَدَيْنِ بَدَلًا عَنْ وُضُوءٍ أَوْ غُسْلٍ أَوْ غَسْلِ عَضْوٍ بِشَرَائِطِ مَخْصُوصَةٍ. So it's wiping pure earth upon the face and the arms. And when we say the arms, we include up to the elbows. So the arms up to the elbows instead of wudu or ghusl, and we said what ghusl was, the purificatory bath which had conditions and so on, or washing any limb in a specific with specific conditions. And inshallah we'll get to the specific conditions later on. Now, why it's very important that we understand this is wiping this is different to, actually we'll touch on next slide with that. And the verse or the evidence for this is again the verse of the wudu verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ وَإِن كُنتُمْ جُنُبًا فَاطَّهَّرُوا وَإِن كُنتُمْ مَرْضَى. So this is the part where we derive for tayammum. So وَإِن كُنتُمْ مَرْضَى أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ أَوْ جَاءَ أَحَدٌ مِّنكُمْ مِنَ الْغَائِطِ أَوْ لَمَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً. And you, so the translation for this bit is, but if you are ill or on a journey, or one of you comes from the place of relieving oneself, or you have contact with women and do not find water, فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. Then seek clean earth and wipe over. فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ مِنْهُ. Then wipe over your faces and your hands. Okay, so this is the dalil. This is the evidence of tayammum being something valid. Now, tayammum versus masah over khuffayn. Okay, tayammum versus masah over khuffayn. Now, masah we said was wiping over the socks. Now, which is better? Wiping over the socks, of course, is, this inshallah is just a side point where we say masah is better than tayammum itself. Why? Because it is done with water, whereas tayammum is done with dirt. And number two is masah itself, it removes hadath, where tayammum doesn't. Okay, so tayammum does not remove hadath itself. So tayammum, you could say, is just, it gives someone the permission, or it just gives the permissibility for one to perform an act, but it does not actually remove hadath. So if someone is in minor impurity, for example, and they perform tayammum, technically speaking, you're still in the state of minor impurity. But what tayammum does, it gives you the pass to perform as-salah. But masah itself, it actually removes hadath completely. And then with masah over khuffain, so when you wipe over the socks, you can perform multiple prayers with this one masah over the khuffain. Whereas with tayammum, you can only perform one fard, and we'll get to that inshallah. And then next is tayammum was permitted in the 6th year of Hijrah. So how many years is this? This is 18 years after prophethood. This permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was granted, and it was during the battle of Banu al-Mustaliq. And hadith for this as well is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, which has been narrated from Jabir radiallahu anhu, he says, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال وجعلت لي الأرض مسجدا وطهورا. So the earth has been made a masjid, meaning a place of prayer, so you can pray anywhere. This is for Muslims. And it has been made tahura, meaning the sand, the soil is all pure. Of course, unless we know najasa has mixed with it. But this has been made specific for this ummah alone. Okay, only this nation, only the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam have been given this benefit. Now, the rulings of tayammum. So, tayammum, it could be of four. It could have four rulings to it. Number one, it could be wajib. Okay, tayammum could be wajib, and an example for this would be if someone fears that the water will harm them, or water will cause death to you, and so on, then it becomes wajib for you to perform tayammum. So let's say, for example, you asked about water, extremely cold water. Yes, I don't know, may Allah protect us, but I don't know, say winter, these lot, they don't have enough power or energy, they do the blackouts, and it's time for salah, and someone's ill. If the water is going to be extremely cold because your boiler is off, it will actually be wajib for you. If this would cause you problems, it will be wajib for you to perform tayammum. Yeah? And then the second type is mubah. Mubah is where it's basically just merely permissible for one to do it. Now, actually, mubah permissibility would be, for example, it's hard for us to probably understand this. So, say you're on a journey and you've got a bit of water. Yeah, you can do wudu. You can do wudu and so on. But, you've got some money. You could buy water, but the water is so expensive. And the money that you have probably won't be enough or will cause you problems. Then you'll have the permissibility of performing tayammum rather than actually buying this water. Whereas we know in tayammum, if you search for water, if you don't have water and you go out and you search for it and you find out that someone is selling it, then it's actually fard upon you to buy this water. Okay, but in this situation, it will be permissible for you not to purchase the water and you can perform tayammum. Next, in a state where it becomes makruh, for example, to repeat tayammum, when you don't even have to. It becomes makruh for one to do so. Next is a situation when it becomes haram. When it becomes haram to perform tayammum, so this is like we spoke about istinja, where it becomes times where there's haram times and so on. So likewise with this, with tayammum, there are times where it is haram, but the tayammum is still valid. But there are times where it is haram, meaning we say haram, the person is sinful for doing it, but the tayammum will not be valid. Now the situation where the tayammum will be valid, but one is sinful, so for example, someone stole earth. So say you went to B&Q and you stole some fresh soil, where it's permissible to do tayammum with. You will be sinful for stealing, of course, the soil, or you jump in someone's garden and you used it without their permission and so on. But your tayammum will be valid nonetheless. It will be valid. But for example, if you do it on earth which is najis, it is impure, it is haram to do it, you're sinful for doing it in the first place, and your tayammum is not valid. Alhamdulillah. So now the conditions of actually performing tayammum. So remember, we gave the definition. We said condition. There's a difference between an integral, and so an integral, in other words, pillar, and a condition. A condition is that thing which needs to happen before the act. So before the act, so for example, salah, before you can pray, there's certain things that have to be in place beforehand. Wudu, awrah covered, and so on. Likewise, there are conditions for the tayammum. Okay, likewise, there are conditions for tayammum. So these conditions are as follows, as the Musannif rahimahullah he mentions. Am I at the right place? Okay, so he says, Faslun, and inshallah we'll translate this. وَالشَّرَائِطُ التَّيَمُّمِ خَمْسَةَ أَشْيَاء. So the conditions are 5 of performing tayammum. Conditions of performing tayammum are 5. So first one, وجود العذر بسفر أو مرض. So a valid excuse. The author has mentioned due to travel or due to illness. Okay, because these are usually the two main times where one will not be able to use water. Number one, of course, traveling, usually this is the case where people won't find water, but alhamdulillah, it's not the case for us anymore. I mean, even on the plane and so on, there's water. And this is mainly with regards to how things were back in the day. On the camels, in the deserts and so on, there will be no water in these places. Now, and when we say sickness or illness, is basically a valid reason for one not to use water. So these valid reasons could be the water may cause death to an individual, and we know this is the case whereby there's a narration of one Sahabi who was in the state of janaba, but he was not well. And the companions told him, you have to go and perform ghusl. Now when he performed ghusl, he passed away due to this. And the Prophet ﷺ obviously told the companions, why did you do that, and so on. Whereby he could have just performed tayammum. So water may cause death, or it will cause delay to someone's recovery. You know how doctors will tell you, make sure water doesn't go anywhere near this wound and so on. Or it may make the illness worse. So for example, you've got a cold and you're using cold water, you don't have hot water for wudu. And if you have to step outside and so on, this can have a negative effect on your illness. Or the ulama, they mention, they say it will cause an ugly defect to a limb which is apparent. So for example, the face, the hands, using water, if it will cause problems, as such, then one does not have to use the water. One can perform tayammum in these cases. So, and obviously, if that is the case, one will have to listen to a reliable doctor who will tell them that if you use water, it's going to cause problems. Yeah, if you use water, it will cause problems. Next one is وَدُخُولُ الْوَقْتِ الصَّلَاةِ, entering of the time. Okay, entering of the time of salah. So one cannot perform tayammum before the start of the time. So before, say for example, dhuhr comes in, or it's not coming yet, and you want to perform tayammum, you cannot perform it beforehand. You have to wait for the salah to actually kick in before you will be permissible to perform tayammum. Okay, let me just get this right. Okay, and number 3, the Musannif, he says, so and one has to be sure that the time has actually entered. one has to be sure. Because of course the verse says, وَإِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, when you stand up for salah, and you only stand up for salah once the time has actually entered. And with tayammum as well, the ulama, they say that this is a darura. Okay, this is an exception, and darura or exceptions are not found until a matter is fard. So when salah becomes fard upon you, and that's when the salah time has kicked in, that's when you can actually perform tayammum during that time. Next is seeking water, so looking for the water. وَطَلَبُ الْمَاءِ, so seeking the water, so it's after the time has kicked in, you will go out and search for water. And from this, where the verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً, and you do not find water. Now of course, someone does not use the term, you do not find this or you do not find that, unless one has searched for it. Yeah, so you have to seek water either by yourself or you get someone to look for it and so on. You will need to find water. And if you're by yourself and so on, I mean if you're in a open land and so on, you would have to travel at least, the ulama they say, about 1.5 kilometers north, so radius of 1.5 kilometers to actually look for this water, which is not that much, to be honest. Some people walk 24/7, isn't it? They walk everywhere. So 1.5k is very, very little, if you think of it that way. But and even if you're in a place where it's fully built, there's buildings and so on, you still need to go out and look for this water and search for the water itself. Khair. Now next one is the incapacity to use water. So what is number 4? Naam. So the Musannif rahimahullah, he says, وَتَعَذُّرُ إِسْتِعْمَالِهِ, so incapacity to use water. And so incapacity to use water would be basically what we just explained in the beginning. One is ill, or this will make their illness worse, or will cause death and cause them more problems. Or if, for example, you're on a mount, back in the day, incapacity to use water, you've only got enough water to give to your mount. For example, your ride. If your ride, your camel, your horse, whoever, they're thirsty, you can give them the water whilst you perform tayammum. Or if you fear that there's a thief, or if you fear that there's an enemy down the road and so on, and that's the only way to get the water, then you're allowed to perform tayammum in these cases. And obviously, I mean, it's hard for us to understand, obviously, this, to be honest, because alhamdulillah, we all have taps in the house. Now, minimum 3 taps: kitchen, bathroom, or shower, and the sink in the toilet. So we all have taps, even though some would say, oh, you can't drink or use toilet water, but it's the same, coming from the same pipeline as your kitchen one, isn't it? Yeah, so that was number 4. And number 5, وَإِعْوَازُهُ بَعْدَ الطَّلَبِ. So this, okay, وَإِعْوَازُهُ بَعْدَ الطَّلَبِ is not being able, so basically not being able to find this water. So وَالتُّرَابُ الطَّاهِرُ وَالتُّرَابُ الطَّاهِرُ لَهُ غُبَارٌ فَإِنْ خَالَطَهُ جِسٌ أَوْ رَمْلٌ لَمْ يُجْزِي. So the 5th point over here, he says, is pure earth containing dust. Now it's important to know that it must contain dust. Yeah, you could find earth, for example, if it's wet, and if you're to strike it, there's no dust coming out, this will not be permissible for us to use. But obviously we know, according to Hanafiya, if I'm not wrong, you can perform on many different things. So if you find anything that has dust on top of it, so you're shelving at home, I don't know, books, and so on, you've not used, if you're to strike on them and dust will come out, you're allowed to perform tayammum with that. Yeah, you're allowed to perform tayammum with that. And according to us, there's a lot of ikhtilaf in the madhab and so on, but just to make things short and easy, even if the soil or the earth is mixed with sand, so long as there's dust that comes out of it when you strike it, it is permissible to use such earth for one to perform tayammum. Okay, now, and obviously this pure earth, it must be purifying. So if you can remember right at the beginning when we spoke about water which is purifying and pure, the different types of water, it must meet these categories. It must meet the same categories whereby it must be able to purify other things. So it can't be dirty, can't have najis and so on within it. Musannif rahimahullah, he says, وَفَرَائِضُهُ أَرْبَعَةُ أَشْيَاءَ, and its compulsory acts are 4. Number 1, so he just list them. النية. Number 2, وَمَسْحُ الْوَجْهِ. Number 3, وَمَسْحُ الْيَدَيْنِ مَعَ الْمِرْفَقَيْنِ. And number 4, وَالتَّرْتِيب. So 4 integrals. Number 1, النية. Inshallah, we'll speak a bit more on that. Number 2 is wiping of the face. Number 3, wiping the arms including the elbows. And number 4 is tartib. Tartib is to follow the order. Now, an-niyya, so the intention. I just wanted to mention a few things with regards to it. Number 1, if you make the intention, you can intend to perform tayammum, intend for fard and nafal together. Okay? You can intend, so you make tayammum, before you do it, you say, you make an intention to perform fard salah, for example, and nafal salah. You can do that, that's fine. You can also intend to perform fard alone. And if you do make that intention, you can still perform other nawafil acts with that. And you can also perform salatul janazah. Okay, and why salatul janazah is mentioned as such is because it is not an individual obligation. It is a communal obligation. If you can remember, we said it is a fard. Which type of fard is it? Salatul janazah. Who can tell me? Salatul janazah, it is fard, but which type of fard? Anyone on Zoom can answer? What type of fard is Salatul Janazah? Yeah, we discussed these types of fara'id. Okay, looks like no one on Zoom knows as well. Okay, so someone answered, mashallah. Yes, fardu kifaya. Okay, so fard, we said there's 2 types of fard. There's fardu ayn and there's fardu kifaya. Fardu ayn is basically the individual obligation where you have to do it by yourself. If you don't do it, you're sinful. So for example, salah, you have to pray, you have to fast, you have to give zakah, you have to go to hajj if you can, and so on. This is the responsibility is upon you. But you've got fard kifaya, which is a communal obligation, whereby if no one in the community does it, the whole community is sinful. So for example, a Muslim passes away, a group of people have to pray on this individual. Yeah? So, but if no one does it, it becomes, they become sinful, the whole community becomes sinful. Yeah, so Salatul Janazah, one can perform that if they intend to perform fard alone with this tayammum. Is that clear, yeah? Next is, if one intends to perform a nafal act only, they cannot perform a fard prayer with it. So it's very specific. So if you can remember the hadith we mentioned, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَىٰ. And for every man, it is what for every person, they get what they intended for. And if you intended nafal, you're not allowed to go a bit to the next stage or the higher stage, which is fard. But if you do fard, it will encompass everything below it. Nawafil, they will all fall under this. Fard kifaya will fall under this as well. So that's if you intend nafal alone. But if one intends, so someone just comes and makes a general intention, they also cannot perform fara'id acts with it. Okay, they also cannot perform fara'id acts with it, because if you just merely intend to perform salah can or will include things like, salah will also include things like sunnah salawat, nafal salawat, and so on. So you have to be very specific in your making of intention. And then the others, so we mentioned, actually we'll just quickly touch on. So the others we said were the wiping of the face, wiping of the arms, and the tartib. So tartib for us is a must. You can't wipe your hands before your face. You have to wipe your face before your hands. If you don't, your tayammum is not valid. Yeah? I mean, there's only two things you have to do really. It's wiping of the face and wiping of the arms. Now, mention the Sunan first? No. So there's some of the other Shafi'i books, they say there's up to 7. But all in all, they're kind of inclusive because they say there's the striking is a must. The 2 strikes are a must. Or placing your hands on the ground and actually bringing up the dirt. You have to. But then again, obviously Musannif, he did not mention this because it's obviously it's understood that to get the dirt onto your face, you have to strike the ground. And you have to do it with 2 strikes. So 1 for the face and 1 for the arms. Now the sunan, there's 3 sunan. Number 1, the obvious one is to say Bismillah. Saying Bismillah before any act that we start, we say Bismillah. So it becomes sunnah in this case as well. And then next one is, so okay, وَسُنَنُهُ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاءَ, and its sunnahs are 3 types. At-tasmiyah, number 1, which is saying Bismillah. وَتَقْدِيمُ الْيُمْنَى عَلَى الْيُسْرَى. Second one is wiping the right before the left. Okay, so once you hit the earth and you've got sand or dust on you, and if you've picked up too much dust, it's good for you to just wipe, obviously just shake some of it off. You just shake some of it off, and then with your left palm, obviously, is you start on your fingertips of your right side, go all the way to the elbows, and turn around and come back down. And then you do the same for the right. And when you're wiping the right side, the right side and the left side, you do it with that same strike. You don't have to hit it once to wipe the right, and then hit it again to wipe the left. So all in all, it's only 2 strikes. 1 for the face and 1 for the arms. And the third one is continuity, al-muwalat, which we mentioned for wudu as well. There shouldn't be a big gap in between. So, I don't know, say you and your friend both have excuse to use, to perform tayammum, and for whatever reason you start talking. Or even if you're doing it by yourself at home, you strike, you do your face, and then you leave, go to do something else and come back, that shouldn't be the case. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much easier we want it to be anyway. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very easy for us already. Continuity. طيب. Next, Musannif rahimahullah, he mentions, or he talks about the invalidators of tayammum. The invalidators of tayammum. So he says, rahimahullah, وَالَّذِي يُبْطِلُ التَّيَمُّمُ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاءَ. So things which break tayammum are 3 as well. So there's 3 things which invalidate tayammum. So number 1, مَا أَبْطَلَ الْوُضُوءَ. So whatever breaks wudu. So we'll get them here. So anything that breaks wudu will break tayammum. It's just common sense. Number 2 is وَرُؤْيَةُ الْمَاءِ فِي غَيْرِ وَقْتِ الصَّلَاةِ, and finding or seeing water in a time other than of salah. We'll just explain that a bit more, inshallah. And number 3, apostasy. Yeah, I mean, if you leave Islam, your tayammum is broken. Likewise in wudu, if you leave al-Islam, your wudu is broken. You've reached the peakest level of filth, you could say, because shirk is the worst of all cases. Now, the finding water, so the second point, if someone sees water, so for example, if someone sees water and they're in a place where they would normally find water, so you're at home or you're in town, you're in the city, you stop, for example, I don't know, next to a service stop or on the motorway, and you've looked around, you can't see water. But then you do tayammum and you start to pray. And then for whatever reason you have this inclination that, oh, you know what, the guys behind me, they've got water in the car, they'll stop, they've seen my car on the hard shoulder, they'll pull over. Just that mere thought, that will break your salah. You have to break your salah and wait for the water to come. That's if it will come, that is. But if you're in a place whereby you know it's very rare to find water, then one does not have to break their salah, even if they have this belief that they might find it. Obviously, the best example I could give is one in the desert. And I'm very highly unlikely that you will find water there. Yeah, so even if you're to hear troops coming, for example, or caravans coming, you would not have to break your salah, because you're in a place where water is normally not found. Just send this quickly. So you're in a place where water is normally not found. Close this. Okay, so now this is for the one who cannot find water. But if someone does tayammum due to illness and then they still find themselves in this situation, it doesn't make a difference to you, because you can't use the water anyway. Yeah, if for whatever reason you cannot use the water anyway. And so the last one we said was ar-ridda, which is apostasy. So, and then next the Musannif, coming up towards the last chapter. Yes, with regards to casts and bandages. Now, with regards to casts and bandages, this is where the Shafi'iyya are kind of different, or they're far from other madahib. Okay, according to Shafi'iyya, they're the strictest when it comes to this, and we'll find out why. So the Musannif rahimahullah, he says, وصاحب الجبائر يمسح عليها ويتيمم ويصلي ولا إعادة عليه إن كان وضعها على طهر. So he says, if we get to that, so he rahimahullah, he says someone with a splint or with a cast or a bandage can perform masah over it. Yeah, we'll write the English shortly inshallah. They perform masah over it, and they do not have to perform or repeat the salah they prayed if they wore the bandage upon tahara. Okay, we'll explain that. And then he says, وَيَتَيَمَّمُ لِكُلِّ فَرِيضَةٍ وَيُصَلِّي بِتَيَمُّمٍ وَاحِدٍ مَا شَاءَ مِنَ النَّوَافِلِ, which we already explained that. Number one, so with regards to the bandages, if someone has a wound, okay, someone has a wound on a place which must be washed, they will wash the healthy limbs. So for example, you've got a problem on your foot, yeah, something wrong with your foot. What you will do is you will wash the rest of the parts you need to wash, so your arms, your face, you wipe your head and so on. But then once you finish, because you cannot wash your foot, water cannot come onto that, what you will do after finishing the tayammum, after finishing the wudu, you will perform tayammum. So you will do wudu and tayammum. Is that clear, yeah? So you will do wudu and tayammum. So tayammum will cover for whatever you could not wash. Yeah? And you do not have to make up for your salah afterwards. But then if there's a barrier, or if there's a cast, and if you can remove it, then you have to. But if you cannot remove it, then you will wipe over it, and then you will do tayammum again. But you will have to repeat. If, for example, you've hurt your arm, you've broken your arm, and you've gone A&E, they've put on a cast now, and you did not have tahara. So the Musannif, he said here, if you put it on whilst you had wudu, you don't have to repeat all the prayers which you prayed with that cast. Which the older scholars, they understand from this, they say, if one puts it on and they did not have wudu, and it's on a place which must be washed, every prayer which you prayed whilst performing masah over it, or performing tayammum over it, you have to repeat that prayer. Yeah, this is why it's the difficult, the hardest. I mean, the Shafi'iyah are the strictest in this point, because they say, one, no water reached it, and two, even tayammum didn't reach it. Because we said tayammum is wiping of the face and the arms, right? So in that case, one will have to repeat all the prayers, be it 5 months, 6 months, you've had a cast for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, you have to repeat the prayers. If the cast went on before you did wudu. Yeah, so it's good to always stay in the state of wudu. You never know when you can trip up and hurt a limb and so on. So this is according to the Shafi'iyah, but obviously according to the other schools, this is not the case. Once you perform masah over it, it doesn't matter. I mean, the fact that it's been put on before wudu or after wudu, it's not conditional to other madahib. Yeah, but according to Shafi'is, obviously we're studying the Shafi'i fiqh, so according to our school, you have to repeat the salah. So now coming up to the end, okay. So I'll just mention a few last points, inshallah, with regards to tayammum. So just to repeat what we just mentioned, if one puts a cast on or a bandage whilst in the state of wudu, okay, whilst in the state of wudu, and they broke, one had wudu and they broke a limb, and then they put the bandage on whilst they had wudu, you will just wipe over it in the days to come and perform tayammum, obviously in place of the limb which you cannot reach, and then afterwards you don't have to repeat the prayers. But if it was done whilst you did not have wudu, you will have to repeat the prayers. You will have to repeat the prayers. Now, if you've got a wound on a part where tayammum is a must, where the limb of tayammum is a must to wash, so for example, your arm or your face, you break your arm, even if you put the bandage on top, according to the madhab, even if you put the bandage on top of tahara, whilst you had wudu, you will still have to repeat the prayers after. So, example, scenario, I've got wudu, we've just prayed maghrib, we start playing football. I fall down, break my arm. I've got wudu, right? I have a cast placed on my arm. Now, with this cast, I can't put water on it, nor can I do tayammum over the limb. Correct? Because I've got a cast on. So every prayer that I've prayed whilst done, and I've done wudu over this cast, I'll have to repeat it. This is according to the madhab.
So even though you've broken your arm, you've got the cast over it, and you go and pray Isha, that you go pray Fajr, you go pray every other salah.
Say 6
The cast comes off
and
you pray wudu properly.
Yes.
Repeat all your salahs.
Yes. So on you could say usually breaking the cast probably stay on for like what, 6 weeks? Normally. So unfortunately you will have to repeat 6 weeks of salah according to the madhab. Basically, not just don't play football, I mean just don't break a bone. Yeah. So that is according to the madhab. But obviously according to other madhahib, that is not the case. No.
Related but slightly off topic, maybe you can speak about at the end. What would be the best way to make up the salah? But I'll let you continue.
Okay, well, I just want to give it just a few, 3 or 4 scenarios, 2 or 3 scenarios, inshallah, with regards to this, and then I'll answer that question. So, another scenario is one is in the state of major impurity, so one has janaba, and then performs tayammum because of lack of water. Remember at the beginning we said even if you're in the state of janaba, you can still perform tayammum and carry on with your daily stuff. If the water will harm you, for example, you cannot use it due to illness. So this individual will only perform tayammum and perform ghusl when water becomes available. That's if they cannot find water, obviously. But if they're ill, they still will not have to use it. So he says that if he had performed any fard prayer after performing tayammum and before water became available, he must repeat the prayer. So let me repeat that again. So someone's had to perform tayammum because they could not find water. Yeah? Try, let it sink in. You've performed tayammum because you couldn't find water. Yeah? And then after performing salah, water becomes available. You have to repeat that prayer now because you have water. And that salah still can be prayed. Yeah?
So is it just for that prayer, or is it, let's say you read Asr, Maghrib, and then by Isha you find water?
No.
So would you repeat Asr, Maghrib, or just...
No, you repeat the prayer in its time. Yeah. Now you pray the salah which is in its time, because that's when tayammum became invalid. But apart from that, it was valid. So this is, inshallah, I think we'll stop there with regards to tayammum. Yeah, so we said obviously according to the madhab, the Shafi'ī madhab are the strictest in this case. So with regards to tayammum, now obviously some might say, but Allah wants to make things easy for you. Why are you making it difficult? And as such, and they would follow different madhabs. But like we said, we're studying the Shafi'ī school in this case. So in your question that you asked, if someone had to make up, for example, 5 weeks worth of salah, what would be the best method to make up? So inshallah this we'll get onto that when we get to Kitāb Salah, with regards to making up prayers, whether it's 5 weeks, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. There's many different methods. Now it depends on the strength or the iman of the individual. Someone can stand up all night, for example, or every night dedicate 2-3 hours of just performing qada. Yeah, you can do that. Or for example, every day, if you're praying Fajr, pray 2 Fajr or 3 Fajrs. For Dhuhr, pray 3 or 4 Dhuhrs, and so on. That way, you'll be able to repay all of the qada. Inshallah, we'll get to that when we get to Kitāb Salah. Now, yes, so that inshallah is the end of tayammum. Are there any questions with regards to this topic? I know it's not a very common one. You don't find many people performing tayammum. But it's important obviously to know, because you will come to a stage where you cannot use water or it's harmful for you, and you might need an alternative because you want to perform your salawat and so on. Khair. Inshallah, if there's...
Can you send a link so that we can have access to your previous videos?
Yeah, inshallah, all of the previous videos we're looking to, we're going to upload all of them. Inshallah, they'll be on the Masjid YouTube, and that link will be sent out as soon as they go on. Inshallah. The lake. So, for example, a lake will depend, and we'll have to look at the characteristics of it. If it's clean, if it's dirty, how much of it is. I mean, the quantity of the lake, is it well over kullatain? If it is over kullatain, we said you have to check one of the qualities. If the color, the taste, or the smell have changed, then it will be classed as impure, then you won't be able to use it. Yeah, so if you don't have access to, so no access to pure or clean water as well, is a reason or a valid reason for someone to perform tayammum. Yeah, so that's a valid reason as well. I mean, over here, what kind of example could you give of a lake? Oxford Park? But our lakes, would you say?
For example, this scenario that you're in the park here, the toilets are closed, and you haven't got no water. Let's say park.
Yeah.
Obviously, that one is a bit dirty. You can see it's dirty, but let's say in a different scenario.
Yeah, I mean, if the lake is clean and it meets the conditions, you can use it to perform tayammum. I mean, you can use it to perform wudu. Sorry. Yeah.
Fresh water,
You can use it to perform wudu, so that won't be a problem. But if you can't find a place to do wudu, no access to clean water, you don't have money, you don't know anyone in the area and so on, pure earth. And Allah has made it easy for us, alhamdulillah.
Do you think condensation from, let's say, a wall or a window has access to water?
Condensation. Yeah, I'll have to come back to you on that one. I mean, it's of course condensation at the end of the day is liquid, isn't it? So it does become water. So if I'm to put 2 and 2 together, I would say if it's sufficient, then yes. But how much condensation will you need to be able to perform wudu? Yeah, even if it's to wash just the fara'id, you'll need quite a bit. And condensation is very little in amount usually. Yeah, so نعم, I think we'll stop there. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.